I can't remember precisely what was the last Jonsbo product that I covered on this channel, but you might have seen the D31 mesh screen. And today we have a smaller brother, D31 mesh screen. Well, this case, as well as the D41, comes in four, actually five, maybe even more varieties, if you take into consideration the white and the black version. So we have the full mesh and full solid panel. That's up to you to decide, of course, what you desire. Then we go to the mesh plus screen and solid plus screen. So four versions, actually eight when you take it into consideration that we have two varieties of colors. So we're going to cover today the D31, which is mATX case, comparing to the D41, which is an ATX case. And I had loads of controversy, let's put it that way, on the D41 video, because everybody was commenting that how did I manage to place an ATX motherboard in an mATX case. So D41 and D31, that's the biggest difference. So let's start with everything. We're gonna get to the part of the screen, and I'm gonna give you some ideas how to adjust it easily without you having the need to tweak anything whatsoever. But let's start. We have the power supply bracket right here behind this shroud, and it's really cool because you can mount an SFF power supply or an standard ATX full size 15 centimeter. I placed 14 centimeters, but you could most likely accommodate 15 centimeters. Now the thing is, you can adjust the height of the power supply because the bracket is adjustable, and you have two screws holding it here at the bottom, but you have two hinges on top holding the power supply additionally. In those terms, you have four positions where you can adjust. I think it's four positions where you can adjust the height. Why is this important? First of all, it's important for the GPU length, then it's important for the cable management, and finally it's important for your AIO, which you decide to place on top, if you decide to go with. So you can go with 360 radiator on top, but you have to lower the power supply lower than this. I placed it on the highest point just to get more space for cable management and for the GPU, because I used an ATX power supply. My suggestion for this case, go with an SFF or SFX power supply, something like Cooler Master V1100, which is really small, but most of those power supplies are small, but this is really small power supply. And what you could do with that is do a perfect cable management, because you will have loads of space around in the bracket for the power supply, which will give you two things: 360 AIO and a long graphic card. Now, this would mean that you can most likely power up all your components without any problems, have a nice small chassis, which we can definitely say it is, mATX motherboard, have a screen on front, 360 AIO, outstanding. This case is mostly based on a chimney effect, because it pulls the air from the bottom and pushes it upwards. You could place a 120 at front, but if you go with the power supply, you might be considering, should I even place one fan on front, and then going into the risk, if I don't do such perfect cable management, will it tangle up with the fan, the cables, of course. And then when we're talking about the fans, you can place 120 at the back as well. So loads of possibilities. And if you're discussing and thinking about going with a custom liquid cooling system right here, you could do that as well, because 360 on bottom, 360 on top, one rear fan if you desire to do so, and I would still suggest an SFX power supply, and you can go with some FLT80 here on the PSU bracket. I think that will look amazing, and without a doubt everything would fit inside properly. Now for the dimensions and what can you expect when we're talking about GPU length, CPU tower cooler height and everything else. It supports ITX, DTX and micro ATX motherboards. You have 4 PCI expansion slots. Front I/O panel has USB 3.2 Generation 2 Type-C, USB 3.0 and audio and microphone 3.5mm jack for pole. The power supply supported, as already stated, is ATX, and the CPU cooler height is up to 168 millimeters. As you can see, I placed their CR3000 CPU tower cooler, which looks outstanding, but we'll have a dedicated video for that. Now let's go forward. Graphic card supports from 330 to 400 millimeters, which depends on the power supply bracket position. Fan mounting. 3 120 or 2 140 at the top, rear 120, bottom 3 120 or 2 140, and front it can accommodate 1 120. Radiator support 240, 280 or 360. So you can combine what I mentioned earlier for liquid cooling. You could definitely go with a lower radiator, maybe eventually squeeze it if the GPU gives you that possibility. So for instance, you want to go with an ATX power supply, which is, let's say, up to 140 millimeters. If you placed it on top, you can go with 240 or 280 radiator and still have enough clearance for the GPU as for 342 to 400 millimeters. Then if you lower it by the second level, it actually has 4 levels. If you go with 140 millimeter power supply, you can go with 3 120 millimeter fans. You can go with GPU 360 millimeters, but if you go with a power supply that is 160 millimeters, then you have space for 342 millimeters of GPU length. Now the third level allows you to place an AIO at the top. GPU goes up to 342 or 360 depending on the cables. And the fourth level, we have top space again for the 360 AIO. 140 or 160 millimeter power supply really doesn't matter. The maximum GPU length is 330 millimeters. So this kind of sums it up when we're talking about the dimensions and everything that you can expect. At the back we have a special canal that you can reroute your EPS cable, rear fan cables, eventually the top cables as well, just to lose the extra cable length, because the case is really shorter in those terms, and you'll really need to manage somehow to lose that extra cable length. Why am I saying this? The screen has the same cable length as the D31. Now the D41 is a bit higher case, and you have extra, let's say, length to lose the cable in those terms. So you won't have, in that case, you won't have that much extra cable sticking out. In D31, you actually do have loads of extra cable length for the USB power on and for the HDMI, so the screen can be actually showing and turned on. So let's go to that part, because this case is actually about that. The template, you can find it on AIDA64. You do need to register and log in there with their forum, and you have a special dedicated thread about screen panels. Over there you can download, if you're registered, you can download the templates and adjust them to your will, so you can change literally everything, because guys over there really do an outstanding work. Now, what's it all about? You do need to go to AIDA64 preferences and sensor panel and adjust everything. It is a bit trickier than some other programs that might have it a bit easier, but after quite some time, after like an hour, you will definitely manage to sort everything out. The one thing that if you go with templates that aren't your design, you'll end up having, just like I do, a picture here that has an NVIDIA logo sticked right on the photo, and you can't change it because you either have to change the whole background and then you have an Intel GPU inside, right? So there's that. The cable is running here at the back. You do have to connect it, of course, logical, to the screen, and it runs back, down, and behind the bottom fans. You have a dedicated PCI expansion slot that has 2 cutouts for the cables, and you connect HDMI to your graphic card, or if you have an integrated graphic card, you don't have a dedicated one, connect it to your motherboard, and the USB needs to also go to the motherboard. That's it for the connections, connection part. There's nothing additional that you need to do. You do need to set up everything in Windows if you're using Windows, just for this one to act as a secondary screen, because you won't most likely have it as a primary screen, right? Unless you're traveling with a case, right? Regardless to that, and jokes aside, this panel right here is removable. So it gives you an option to access the cables for the power supply, fans, mounting top, bottom, adjusting the bracket for the power supply and everything else. Now, one more thing I do have to mention about this sensor panel. On the D41 video, I got loads of questions. can I give you the template of the one that I used in that video? This is another one that I found over there. It's not mine to give, but I can give you an advice. If you go to that specific thread and find the resolution for this screen, which is 1280 times 800, you just have to write that number into their search for that thread, and you will literally have all the templates just for this, well, just for this resolution, right? So it's quite straightforward. It's not that you have to go through all the 1,000 pages of that post, because there are loads of templates in different resolutions for different screens. So yeah, there's that. So hope I covered almost everything when we're talking about the screen. Of course, it can act as a additional screen. You can place here anything, watch movies here. I mean, if you desire to do so, of course, it's all up to you. Play games. It's all up to you. I won't go into that segment, but it's not strictly based with AIDA64. It's not strictly based with these gouges and thermals and everything. You can make, you can place, I don't know. Imagination is something that is incredible, and I think you'll come up with something cool and original, and not like me using a template that somebody else did. But eventually I have a video dedicated for this screen, which will be separated, and I will definitely create my own template and place it right here. So it'll be a separated template that I'll use for my daily usage. But there will be another video which you will see hopefully shortly, and the CR3000 as well. Now for the benchmarks, I know I went a bit too far and too long for this video, so let's check out the benchmarks. I'm using this time something new, and it's definitely for some of you guys a shocker. We have Intel Core i5 13400F. And we have right here ASRock Intel Arc A770 16 gigs. So it's going to be interesting because this is a full Intel build. And here we go. AIDA64 Extreme Edition System Stability Test. CPU went up to 52 degrees Celsius with clock going up to 4000 megahertz. GPU went up to 64 degrees Celsius, and this was all on 100% speed on the fans. Now Cinebench R23, this is something interesting. Now I got some conclusions comparing this processor with 7600X, but regardless to that, that will be a different topic for a different video. We have temperatures going quite strange, I would say. 53, 48, 48, 48, 47, 54, 47, it goes, I don't know how this goes. The clock speeds went up to 4100, to 3700, to 4100, and then again up and down. And when we're talking about the scores now, I was really shocked to get the first score 13,693, and I hoped it would stay there, but it didn't. It fell down to 13,000, and it circulated around 13,300. Now these two components, the GPU and the processor, are something new that I placed inside. And for the first time testing, the GPU thermals, what I can say, are normal. I think 64. The thermals were going actually from 60 to 68 in AIDA64 Extreme Edition. And it kind of went all around, but I think the thermals are quite alright. We have three 120mm fans here at the bottom, blowing directly to the GPU, helping the GPU fans. But the CPU, apart that it's a weaker CPU than the 7600X, at least in these benchmarks, the 52 degrees Celsius, finally seeing a processor that doesn't work on maximum temperatures, and we don't have those 90 degrees Celsius, which are normal, right? But I explained that in a couple of videos, so I won't go into that discussion. Since the main actor of this show was Jonsbo D31 mesh screen, an outstanding case. You can really do a nice cable management at the back if you're careful. You can really pack loads of stuff inside. Unfortunately, depending on the thickness of the GPU and the position of the first PCI Express slot on the motherboard, it depends on the fans on the bottom. Because this Phantom Gaming GPU is 2-slot GPU, and if you go with 3-slot, you can forget about the fans if the GPU is placed in the second PCI slot. So yeah, regardless to that, I think this case is really outstanding. First, because as I already said, let me just do this a bit. First of all, because it's an outstanding and clean implementation, as already stated in D31 of the screen. You can remove it, pop it out, place the mesh front, and that's all there is to it. Guys, big thumbs up for Jonsbo. I've said this a million times in the past videos. I'm really satisfied with their products and how they're doing their job by producing an outstanding quality products, fans, cases, everything all together. Big thumbs up, and the PC Crazy approved badge for the D31 mesh screen. Guys, you know what happens. I'm placing the link in the description below so you can check out the prices and everything that you want to know more, and I'll place the link for the motherboard and the GPU as well so you can check out that if you desire to do so. In the meantime, if you like this a bit longer video, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and click the notification bell. That means a lot because you'll get notified on the future content coming right up. Thank you once again. See you next time. Bye bye.